This is Jocko Podcast number 158 with Echo Charles and me, Jocko Willink. Good evening, Echo.
Good evening.
There was blood all over the floor and smoke in the air. I heard shots fired outside, but I wasn't quite sure who was shooting or what they were shooting at. I moved down the hallway, confirming that all the rooms had been cleared. I soon found the source of the blood, a wounded Iraqi civilian on whom my SEAL hospital corpsman, a highly trained combat medic, was working to apply medical care. And that's just a short little opening from chapter 2 of the book, The Dichotomy of Leadership, that I wrote with my brother Leif Babin. And in that chapter, I go on to explain how during this operation in Fallujah, Iraq, we went on to detain multiple suspected terrorists that night. And I don't go into much detail about that. And I don't talk about the people that we captured. I think we took about 13 people off target, military-aged males. We were probably looking for 2 or 3. We couldn't figure out or confirm who they were. So we brought all the military-aged males off target. And so we end up at this detention facility and we're turning these individuals over. And I'm sitting there kind of just looking at them, just sizing them up. This was one of the earliest operations I had done in my life. It was the first big operation I did in Iraq. And so I'm sort of curious, I guess, for lack of a better word. And I'm looking at the people that we had captured. Like I said, I think there's 13 of them. And just looking at them, looking at their emotions that they were going through, and some of them look scared, right? In fact, I would say the majority of them just look scared. Just, this is not good and this is a bad situation, and you get that feeling like, okay, this guy's probably not bad and will be released. Some of the guys looked mad, which is understandable too. You know, someone comes into your house in the middle of the night and takes you, and you can be mad about that if you can overcome the scared part, right? Mm-hmm. And of course, these people had lived under Saddam Hussein, so they'd been through some brutal stuff. And for them to be not afraid was also an understandable thing, some of the older gentlemen. And then there was one guy, though, that he looked different. The look in his eyes, it definitely wasn't scared, but it wasn't even mad. It was like beyond mad. It was beyond angry. It was beyond a fanatical look. The look that he had in his eyes was evil. Looked like an evil. We could see evil there, and I never will forget that face. And I would see that type of face again over the years. Especially in Iraq, you'd go out and capture someone that was known for doing horrible things, and you could tell. You'd grab 5 or 6 people, and you'd say, "Oh, let me guess which one is the bad guy." And it usually wasn't very hard to tell. And then occasionally, some of those bad guys would just look. They looked completely evil. They looked like sadists. They looked like murderers. They had the face of evil. You could see it in their eyes. And I was watching a video recently of a beautiful young girl, blonde hair, kind of unkempt blonde hair, a little bit wild, and she had a constant, persistent smile, sort of shining on her face. She had young, little innocent eyes that were filled with hope. And I watched this video, and she says in the video, she says, "My name is Louisa. I'm a young lady from Denmark, and I have a burning desire to go out into the Arctic." And she's going on kind of describing herself. She says, "I'm very enthusiastic about the outdoors and outdoor activities. I'm studying outdoor life in Norway for this same reason. I'm trying to find my dream," she says, "to go into the Arctic." But sometimes I take some detours before I end up where I want. And in the video, she's got clips of her in various parts of the world, on beaches and in jungles, and she's clearly a traveler. And then she says, but I'm still working my way towards the north. A dream that has been stuck in my head. And I hope, wish, and pray that I can achieve my dream. A dream of experiencing the feeling of kicking a dog sled through the big Arctic. About feeling the ice crystals in my face. And the view of an infinite white landscape. I dream about learning and experiencing the magnificent, untamed Arctic. And the video ends with her picking up snow in her hands, and she blows it innocently into the camera lens, and she's laughing. And then the video fades. But she was not able to fulfill her dream. In fact, she entered a nightmare and didn't return. On December 17th, 2018, that girl who made that video, her name was Louisa Jesperson, and her friend Maren Euland, another beautiful young lady from Norway. They were both brutally murdered by a group of subhuman savages as they camped beside a hiking trail in Morocco. And these despicable and vile people, and I use that term loosely, these savages that murdered these two girls actually recorded their disgusting acts and posted them online. They attacked these girls. They sawed through their throats with butcher knives while they were still alive, while they were screaming, while they were gasping for air, while they were begging for mercy, and while they were eventually gurgling in their own blood. And then fell silent. And one of the murderers put his foot on one of the girl's heads to hold her neck in place while he finished the job of decapitating her. And these subhumans pledged their allegiance to ISIS and shouted, "It's Allah's will," as they killed these innocent girls. Sick, depraved, vile creatures. Evil. Evil does exist. Here is another example of evil. I started doing time when I was 11 years old and have been doing practically nothing else since then. What time I haven't been in jail, I have spent either getting out or getting in again. I have no desire whatever to reform myself. My only desire is to reform people who try to reform me, and I believe the only way to reform people is to kill them. In my lifetime, I have murdered 21 human beings. I have committed thousands of burglaries, robberies, larcenies, arsons, and last but not least, I have committed sodomy on more than 1,000 male human beings. For all of these things, I am not the least bit sorry. I have no conscience, so that doesn't worry me. I don't believe in man, God, nor devil. I hate the whole damned human race, including myself. I preyed upon the weak, the harmless, and the unsuspecting. This lesson I was taught by others. Might makes right. Carl Panzram, number 31614. And that is the opening of a book called Panzram, Journal of a Murderer. Carl Panzram was evil. He was institutionalized for most of his life in detention centers and prisons. And whatever may have been good about him at one time or another was eventually suffocated. And what was left was pure, unmitigated hatred and malevolence. And while he was going through one of his final stints in prison, he made friends with a young prison guard by the name of Henry Lesser. And Henry Lesser seemed like a very good, positive person. Kind of had the ideal of reform and how people could be helped in his mind. And Henry asked that Panzram write the story of his life, which Panzram did. And the notes were saved and documented, and there was additional information from various supporting sources surrounding other details of Panzram's life, and all of that was put together and turned into this book, which, though it is a very difficult read, it's, in my opinion, worth reading to gather a better understanding of human nature, and specifically of the capacity for men to commit evil. So, again, most of this that I'm going to read from the book is his writing, Carl Panzram's writing. And here we go, back to the book. I was born June 28th, 1891, on a small farm in Minnesota. My parents were of German descent, hardworking, ignorant, and poor. The rest of the family consisted of 5 brothers and 1 sister, all of whom are dead except 3 of us brothers and our sister. All of my family are as the average human beings are. They are honest and hardworking people, all except myself. I have been a human animal ever since I was born. When I was very young, at 5 or 6 years of age, I was a thief and a liar, and the older I got, the meaner I got. As fast as the older boys grew up, they also pulled out. 1 died. This left me, my sister, 1 older brother, and my mother. My sister and I were sent to school during the days, and as soon as we came home in the evenings, we were put to work in the fields where my older brother and my mother were always at work from daylight until long after dark sometimes. My portion of pay consisted of plenty of work and a sound beating every time I looked cockeyed or done anything that displeased anyone who was older and stronger and able to catch me and kick me around whenever they felt like it. And it seemed to me, and still does now, that everything was always right for the one who was the strongest, and every single thing that I'd done was wrong. Everybody said so anyway. But right or wrong, I used to get plenty of abuse. Everybody thought it was all right to deceive me, lie to me, and kick me around whenever they felt like it. And they felt like it pretty regular. That is the way my life was lived until I was about 11 years old. At about that time, I began to suspect that there was something wrong about the treatment I was getting from the rest of the human race. When I was about 11 years old, I began to hear and see that there were other places in this world besides my own little corner of it. I began to realize that there were other people who lived nice, easy lives and who were not kicked around and worked to death. I decided that I wanted to leave my miserable home. Before I left, I looked around and figured that one of our neighbors who was rich and had a nice home full of nice things, he had too much and I had too little. So one night I broke into his home and stole everything that, to my eyes, had the most value. Those things were some apples, some cake, and a great big pistol. Eating the apples and cake and carrying the pistol under my coat, I walked to the railroad yards where I caught a freight train going to the west where I intended to be a cowboy and shoot Indians. But I must have had my wires crossed because I missed my connection somewhere. Instead of going out and seeing the world, I was caught, brought back home, and beaten half to death, then sent to jail from there to the Minnesota State Training School at Red Wing, Minnesota. Right there and then I began to learn about man's inhumanity to man. So he's off to a rough start.
Yes.
And it was his father had left him, and I didn't mention that part. Obviously, I'm not reading every part of the book, but his father had left the family, and then it was up to his mom. Sounds like he had the more than his share of the rebellious streak that I think most kids have. And then he shows up at this Minnesota State Training School. Back to the book. When I first went to the Minnesota State Training School, I was about 12 years old, lively, healthy, and very mischievous, innocent, and ignorant. The law immediately proceeded to educate me to be a good, clean, upright citizen and a credit to the human race. They trained me all right in that training school. During my 2 years, I was trained by two different sets of people to have two different sets of morals. The good people tried to train me to be good, and the bad people did train me to be bad. The method that the good people used in training was to beat goodness into me and all the badness out of me. They'd done their best, but their best wasn't good enough to accomplish what they set out to do. The more they beat me and whipped me, the more I hated them and their damn religion. Oh yes, we had plenty of church and religion, all right. I used to be pretty ignorant and not able to read very well, so I always had a hard job learning my Sunday school lessons. For failure to learn these lessons, I was given a whipping. During the first year I was there, I used to get a beating every Saturday night and sometimes 3 or 4 more during the week for doing something I wasn't supposed to do or for not doing something I was supposed to do. Oh yes, I had plenty of abuse. They had various methods of punishing us for doing wrong and for teaching us to do right. The most popular with them was to take us to the paint shop, so called because there they used to paint our bodies black and blue. Naturally, I now love Jesus very much. Yes, I love him so damn much that I would like to crucify him all over again. I was too dumb to learn anything in school, so they took me out and put me to work all day washing dishes and waiting on tables in the officer's dining room. Right there, I began to get a little revenge on those who abused me. When I served some food to some of the officers, I used to urinate in their soup, coffee, or tea and masturbate into their ice cream or dessert and then stand right beside them and watch them eat it. They enjoyed it too because they told me so. I wish they could read this now. The next thing I tried to do was poison that Mr. John Moore by putting rat poison in his rice pudding. But they caught me, beat me, and put me out of the dining room. About that time, I began to try and figure out some way to punish those who punished me. The only thing I could figure out was to burn down the building in which the paint shop was located. This I did. I got a long, thick piece of heavy cotton string, wrapped it around and around a long, round stick, and lit one end of it and hid it in the laundry near some oil-soaked rags. That night, the whole place burned down at a cost of over $100,000. Nice, eh? Some of the boys who were cleverer than I finally put me wise to how I should perform if I ever wanted to get out of that joint. They told me to act like I was a very good boy, tell everybody I met how much I loved Jesus and how I wanted to go home and be a good boy, go to school and learn to be a preacher. I done just as they suggested, and I'm damned if it didn't work out just as slick as hot grease through a tin horn. I was called in before the parole board one day, and there I told them all the lies and hot air I could, and they gave me a parole and let me go home. In that way, I first found out how to use religion as a cloak of hypocrisy to cover up my rascalities. Rough way to kick things off.
Yeah. But you almost like, you talk about like evil, you almost feel it for him though.
Oh, for sure.
You almost are on his side, kind of like, everyone was just beating you up your whole life, just grinding you to the ground, beating you up, and then like, yes, you're getting it. That's how you feel right now.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things that's going to be, you feel sympathetic for someone, and then you, as that person moves through life. First of all, there's other people that have been through worse things that turn out great and wonderful human beings. And there's other people that go through less that turn out worse, right? So I'm no psychologist, but it's one of the things that's troubling about this.
Yeah.
And as you hear what he goes through and what he turns into, it's definitely a challenge. And at the end of the day, in my opinion, like, hey, you're still responsible for your actions. Yeah. And hey, we get it that you went through some hard things. That doesn't give you an excuse to behave in an immoral way. It just doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't.
I'm sure that like he was saying how he's, pissing in the soup and whatnot. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming that was of the people who were like trying to correct him and and beating him
like
more.
The staff, staff of the school where he was being trained at.
Yeah, so I think that's sort of why you're like kind of feeling for him, because it's like, oh yeah, you're getting direct revenge on them, kind of thing. And of course you're an angry kid.
Yeah,
of course, what you went through. But then, once you start just taking it out, like, oh, let me see an innocent person, I'm mad at them because their life is, and then you kill them or something. Then that's when you're gonna start to not feel for them. Yeah. I'm sure. I think.
Yeah, well, I think so too. Yeah, I guess you do get that kind of feeling like, oh, these guys are beating you up. Now you're getting a little revenge. Yeah, yeah. You could make a positive movie about that, right? You could make a positive story about that. You could
spin it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, depending on where it goes from there. Yeah. So right now, you're on his side.
Yeah,
basically is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Basically.
Back to the book. After serving about 2 years there, I was pronounced by the parole board to be a nice, clean boy of good morals, as pure as a lily, and a credit to those in authority in the instruction where I had been sent to be reformed. Yes, sure, I was reformed all right. Damn good and reformed too. When I got out of there, I knew all about Jesus and the Bible, so much so that I knew it was all a lot of hot air. But that wasn't all I knew. I had been taught by Christians how to be a hypocrite. And I had learned about stealing, lying, hating, burning, and killing. From the treatment I received while there and the lessons I learned from it, I had fully decided when I left there just how I would live my life. I made up my mind that I would rob, burn, destroy, and kill everywhere I went and everybody as long as I lived. That's the way I was reformed in the Minnesota State Training School. That's the reason why. So that's a little bit more. That's where you have something in his personality, right? There's something. There's plenty of people that went to this school that didn't go and do what he did. He made that something snapped.
Yeah.
Where he decided that he was just going to make his life a life of making people suffer. Going on, back to the book. I did not want to learn these lessons, but I found out that it isn't what one wants in this world that one gets. Force and might make right. Perhaps things shouldn't be that way, but that's the way they are. I learned to look with suspicion and hatred on everybody. As the years went on, that idea persisted in my mind above all others. I figured that if I was strong enough and clever enough to impose my will on others, I was right. I still believe that to this day. So this is just twisted.
Yeah.
It doesn't take long for him to get pretty twisted. And like there's a lesson here of the lesson that he talks about of I found out that it isn't in the what one wants in the world that one gets. It's like that's actually an important lesson. Like you don't always get what you want. But then taking that to say, hey, if I'm strong enough and I can force my will on things, then I'll get what I want more often.
Yeah. And that he did say clever enough too.
Yeah.
Which kind of, it's weird because like a real low, super low level of that still goes on, I think, with a lot of people.
Oh, there's no doubt about it.
With justification and how like, you'll justify things in your head, be like, oh, when you do something bad or you do something is unfair, even that kind of low level stuff, like it's not hurting no bunch for sure, but it's like maybe not fair or something like that, and you just justify in your head. And like some people, they're clever, like they're smart, so they can justify. Their justifications are way more legit seeming because they're real smart. They can just it's kind of like what you see the lawyers do in the movie. You paint someone to be like someone like you kind of take things out of context and put other things in context that are not supposed to be there, kind of thing. And you just kind of paint this picture in your own mind why what you're doing is right, and of course in other people's mind too. Then you're clever enough to get away with it. Yeah, you're justifying it to yourself, and he's not even talking about that. He doesn't need to justify it to himself. He's doing what he's doing to get what he wants. Yeah, and his use of being clever isn't to justify to himself. His use of being clever is just to outwit people and take advantage of them. Yeah, be a con man. Beyond a con man. And he's in and out of prison. And he goes back into prison. He gets out of prison. He goes back into prison. Here at this point, he broke out of prison and he hooks up with a guy named Jimmy Benson. Back to the book. He showed me how to work the stick-up racket and how to rob the poor boxes in churches. I, in turn, taught him how to set fire to a church after we robbed it. We got very busy on that, robbing and burning a church regular every chance we got. When we got tired of riding a train, because this is their hitching on these trains. When we got tired of riding on a train, we used to open up the journal boxes, take out the greasy waste, packing, and throw in some sand or gravel into it. They wouldn't get far with that car. So they get done riding a train and they just destroy it. They ruin the gearboxes. Just general destruction of everything. Continues in and out of prison. One time he's drunk and here's a guy talking about the army and ends up enlisting in the army. Back to the book. I was only in the army a month or two when I got 3 years in U.S. military prison at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. I had the job of swinging an 18-pound hammer in the rock quarry most of my bit. My number was 1874, and my name was Carl Panzram. There, I done 37 months. I done plenty of work, and I had plenty of punishment, and the only good part of it was that they didn't try to hammer any more religion into me. At this time in my life, I was about 20 years old, 6 foot tall, and weighed about 190 pounds of concentrated, hell-fired, man-inspired meanness. I was strong as 2 or 3 average men. I had to be able to withstand some of the punishments and labor that I went through during my 3 years in the U.S. Military prison. One of my tasks and punishments while there was to be shackled to a 50-pound iron ball for 6 months. During that time, I wore the ball and chain day and night, slept with it, and worked with it on. My work was in the rock quarry, and that was 3 miles from the prison. The gang of about 300 convicts and 40 screws used to march out in the morning and back at night. The other men had to carry nothing except themselves, but my part was to load my iron ball, an 18-pound hammer, a pick and shovel, and a 6-foot iron crowbar all into a wheelbarrow and march behind the line of cons out to the quarry and work there for 8.5 hours in the hot Kansas sun, busting big rocks.
But all that treatment did one good thing for me. The worse food was and the harder they worked me, the stronger I got.
That's what I was going to say. So he got a good workout.
Yeah.
Already big, by
and
the
you
way.
think, he's 6 feet, 190 pounds back in, 1900 or whatever. He's a yoked dude back then. And then he's doing all this hardcore physical labor. And, he's turning into a very scary dude. Back to the book. I was discharged from prison in 1910. By the way, can you imagine you're in the Army for a couple months and you get put in the Leavenworth for 3 years? I was the spirit of meanness personified. I had not at this time got so that I hated myself. I only hated everybody else. Before I left there, I sung him the same old song and gave him the same line about how I sure loved Jesus and what a nice young man I was and how much good it had done me to be sent to that prison. I don't know if they believed me or not, but they all said they did anyway. They all declared that I was pure as a lily and free from sin. Again, there's a bunch of traveling. There's a bunch of... He's a constant criminal. And that's another thing we realize back in this day. The reason he said, at this time I was Carl Panzram, is because he changes his name a bunch because that's what you would do back then if you were a criminal. And there's no electronic tracking system. Yeah. There's no phone numbers, no cell phone. There's not even phones in everyone's houses. Yeah. So you can get away with murder, quite literally, and he does. But he's maybe not the best criminal as well because he gets caught a lot. For robbing and stealing. And part of it's because he has a doesn't care attitude. Yeah. So he gets arrested at a different time. He gets put into a chain gang and he eventually escapes the chain gang. And then he goes continuing skipping trains and ends up with an Indian guy. And they work together as a little team and they rob a guy. And here we go back to the book. The Indian tied him up. First, he took off his belt, pulled his pants down to below his knees and tied his legs together. Then he tied his hands behind his back. Then he tied his hands to his feet, pulled together. Then he stuffed a sock in his mouth and tied a handkerchief tight over that, and then tied him to a tree. He was then ready to leave him and walk away, but I wasn't through yet. I figured while I had such a good chance as that, I would commit a little sodomy on him. This I proceeded to do. And he mentions at one point that he hooked up with a girl and got some kind of VD. And then he was like, girls, they're dirty. And so that's why he goes after guys now. Back to the book. At night, while I was riding the freight trains, I was always on the lookout for something to shoot or trying to stick up the hobos that I met on the trains. I looked them all over, and whenever I met one who wasn't too rusty looking, I would make him raise his hands and drop his pants. I wasn't very particular either. I rode them old and young, tall and short, white and black. It made no difference to me. Some months later, I was pinched at Chinook, Montana for burglary. I quick took a plea of guilty and got 1 year at the state prison at Deer Lodge, Montana. When I got there, I met my old partner, Jimmy Benson, who was doing 10 years for robbery. I stayed there about 8 months and escaped. He's also good at escaping. He escapes all these things all the time. A week later, I was arrested in Three Forks, Montana for burglary under the name of Jeff Rhodes. I pleaded guilty and got a year and was sent back to Deer Lodge, where I was at once brought to court and given 1 year for my escape under the name Jeff Davis. Out of these 3 sentences, I served 23 months. In that prison, there was only work for a few men, and I wasn't one of those. All the cells were for 2 men in each cell. Each man could choose his own cellmates and get a new one anytime he wanted. I used to want a new one pretty regular. At that place and time, I got to be an experienced wolf. I knew more about sodomy than old boy Oscar Wilde ever thought of knowing. I would start in the morning with sodomy, work as hard at it as I could all day and sometimes half the night. I was so busy committing sodomy that I didn't have time left to serve Jesus, as I had been taught to in those reform schools. He gets out of that prison. As soon as I got to Oregon, and gets put in another prison. As soon as I got to Oregon State Prison, I was in more trouble. I swore I would never do the 7 years and defied the warden and all his officers to make me. Gets put in solitary confinement. Here we go in solitary confinement. There are coolers and coolers. Some are bad and some are worse. None are good. Some are cold and wet. Some are hot and dry. Some you freeze and others you roast and sweat. In all you are hungry and thirsty and filthy and dirty. In some you stay a day, others a week, and there have been times when I have been in the cooler a month or more. Bread and water isn't very nourishing, and neither does it generate clean thinking in a person's mind. The milk of human kindness generally curdles and turns into sour under such conditions. The more cooler you get, the more heat and hate there is in your heart. In every joint I was ever in, there was always some form of torture that was on tap. I usually got my share of every kind there was. I have had them all at one time or another. And then he goes on through a bunch of different torture that they would use on these prisoners, from like straitjacket type things. There's something called the snorting pole, which is a post about 12 feet long. You get basically tied to it. You get whipped. Back to the book. When the lash begins to take away little bits of hide and the blood begins to run, then the sucker begins to jerk and yelp and snort. That's why it's called the snorting pole. When a man is let down after being whipped, he has blood on his back and murder in his heart. That's all about the snorting pole. There's the bat and the paddle. Here's this thing, the restraint machine. The restraint machine, barefooted, standing on a cold, damp concrete floor, backed up to an iron-barred door, hands behind cuffed to the door, a large belt under my arms, around my chest, pulled tight to the door, standing in that position for 4 hours, then let down for 1 hour to eat my bread and water, then 4 hours more, then to bed, which was a board, no blankets. In the morning, bread and water, and then 4 hours more, and so on for a stretch of anywhere from 5 to 14 days. That was the limit. That's your restraint machine. Have you ever... Okay, I know you're claustrophobic, right?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, you are.
Yeah.
But sometimes... I don't think I'm claustrophobic, but sometimes I want to move a limb, right? You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
And, for instance, you're on a plane, and it's all tight in an economy seat up against the bulkhead, and there's like, it's tight.
Yeah.
You know that part of the plane towards the back where the bulkhead kind of curves in, so you're even losing a little bit more space.
Yeah.
And you just want to move.
Yeah.
You know, but you can't because the seatbelt light just went on or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Now imagine doing 4 hours like that for 14 days. 4 hours twice a day for 14 days.
Yeah. So
that's harsh.
Yeah, that's actually real harsh. So there's like two ways, and to say because claustrophobia usually is like, you know, you go in an elevator and you feel it, that kind. You know, I don't have it like that, but yeah, maybe I'm a little bit more sensitive to those kinds of scenarios.
You have side control claustrophobia.
Well, you know, I used to, yes, but this is more what it is, to put it accurately.
Did I heal you?
You healed me, yeah. Actually, what it was like I just got in better shape. That's all. Because like it was the idea that I'm like tired and I won't be able to get out of here. Like I'm stuck here forever. I'm gonna die here. That's the feeling you get. But when I wasn't tired, I'm like, oh no, I can cruise down here. I don't know. I just felt like it was better.
The last time we rolled, didn't you have a little issue down there?
No.
Are you sure?
Yes. I don't remember having any issue recently. Probably like it's been years. But that's the feeling is what it is. So, but when I got an MRI on my arm.
You tapped to something the other day that's not a tapping offense. I forget what it was.
It was that that forearm on my throat. Remember?
Yeah.
It was a tapping fan. Like I
Okay.
couldn't.
Yeah,
it
that
was
is a
too like you did it too hard for me to have time to figure out. Okay, I can turn this way or whatever to relieve the pain. You did it like too fast.
Oh, I did it with like a little extra, like a little.
Yeah, it wasn't like a strike or nothing like that. But yeah, it was like my throat would have got injured if I would have like took more time. Thanks for that, by the way. I had a MRI on my
Oh, you have to
bicep.
go in that tube.
Yeah. So, which is fine if you're just in a comfortable position.
Mm-hmm.
It can be when you open your eyes and you look how freaking the tube is like inches in front of your face and you're in there. And yeah, it can kind of jam you out, but you just close your eyes and be like, oh,
Claustrophobia is a big deal in the SEAL teams, especially because you had to lock out of the submarine chambers, which isn't, in the old days, it was a submarine chamber that wasn't built for SEALs to lock out of. It was built for an escape hatch if there's an emergency on the submarine.
What do you mean lock out? What does that mean?
You're underwater on a submarine,
Yeah,
and you go into a little chamber,
uh-huh.
and then once you're in the little chamber, it fills with water, it equalizes with the outside, and then the door opens up and you can swim out.
Okay.
That's called a lockout chamber, and we used to do that.
Yeah.
And we still do it, but like it's a little bit more of a specialized group that does that now.
Yeah.
But it used to just be a general thing for if you were in the Dames, you would do that. And I mean, definitely, because you're in there with equipment.
for how long?
A while.
Like
it would take
what,
a long time to get a whole SEAL squad out.
Like what? More like what's a while? Like
Well,
5 minutes?
you'd be in that little chamber for probably 15 minutes at a time. But here's the thing: you're in there. There's two major situations going on. Number one, you're not just in there. You're in there with like one or two other guys.
Yeah.
But you're also in there with equipment.
Yeah.
So you got bags of weapons, waterproof weapons. You actually have your boats in there, and so it's all tight.
Yeah.
And here's what would really freak you out. So the water starts to fill. It starts to fill up.
Yes.
And then as it's filling up, it gets to a point where you got to keep it equalized, and you're using these little pressure valves. Mm-hmm. You basically crank a valve that pushes air into the chamber.
Oh.
And so that pushes the water down. If you're not good, then you're going to mess up the pressure, and it's called losing the bubble, because there's a bubble of air that you're just sitting there breathing.
Yeah.
If you don't equalize the pressure well, then that bubble just keeps going up, and then you lose the bubble. The bubble's gone.
Yeah.
Which I think is where that's what I always thought, losing the bubble. You've heard that term, right?
No.
Okay, when someone says, "Oh, he's losing the bubble," you've never heard that before?
No.
Well, we would say it, and I've heard civilians say it too. So I'm pretty sure that
might
it's
be it.
yeah.
Submarine.
But I think that's where it came from. It's like, "Oh, you're losing the bubble." And I've been in the chamber when someone lost the bubble.
Yeah.
And I remember I was telling the guy, I was like, "Hey, you're losing the bubble. You're losing the bubble. You're losing the bubble." And then I'm underwater, and then you got to find the octopus, which is the regulator, which you have air tanks just in there, like compressed air tanks, like scuba tanks that are strapped to the wall just in case someone loses the bubble. And then you got to find, they got a chem light on them, a red chem light. So you just digging around. You got to grab the red chem light. You find your thing. You start breathing, and you find the valve, and you crank it, and then the bubble comes back. But but people, you if you're claustrophobic in that situation, it's going to be problematic.
Big time.
Yeah.
Huge. Yeah. Because
just the expression on your face at this time tells me that you would not be
How big was it? How big is the chamber? Like,
it's smaller than the area that you and I are sitting right now. It's tight.
Yeah. So my MRI for my bicep, I had to go like this, like my hand up in the air. Well, I'm laying down, so it's not up in the air, but like, so you're not laying regular. One hand is up.
Oh, okay.
And for 15 minutes in that little teeny tiny tube. So, like how you're saying, I could lay on my bed like that.
Did they sedate you or anything?
No.
You just dealt with it?
No, yeah, this was, no.
I've had a few MRIs in my time, but I just relaxed and went in there. No big deal. I didn't lose the bubble like you did.
Right. No. The thing is, I did. Well, here's the thing. So this is when I really admitted to myself, okay, I have like a little sensitivity to it. So he's like, okay, you got to put your arm up because it, and you can't move. So I'm thinking, man, I can just lay down my bed like this all day. I'll sleep like that, But why am I super like nervous about this? So I go in and he's putting me in, and I feel my heart just start beating real fast, like full on. I'm like, oh man, but I mentally pushed through it. Like the kind after like not even a minute, but maybe like 30, 45 seconds. I'm like,
Have you ever watched guys cave diving?
Like, what do you mean? No.
Like diving in caves.
Yeah.
Where there's underwater, but it's an underwater cave.
Yeah.
And you're diving.
Yeah.
That can get a little tight.
Yeah. So, and on Kauai, there's a place called the Blue Room, and it's that. And here's the thing. So it's basically a cave. You walk up this mountain, maybe like, I don't know, 50 yards maybe up a mountain, and you go into the mountain. Well, no, the mountain is huge. Oh, okay. You just walk up 50 yards, then there's a cave. Cool, that's where the cave is. And you go in the cave, and depending on how much it rained or whatever, there's a little lake in the cave. It's really cool. We used to always go. At the back of the cave is a little teeny tiny hole. Teeny tiny hole. So if the water's too high and it covers that hole, it's still a hole, but you got to go underwater. So at the end of that, basically that hole is a hallway that you swim through. You can't touch the bottom. It's like you swim through this little hallway, and it goes and it curves. This is maybe a 20 yards. Dang. Maybe. Not 20. That's maybe 10 yards in the dark though. And the only light is this glowing bright blue light that the water creates from the sun that shines in the water and kind of reflects up. It's really nice, but yeah, if you have an issue with that, especially if the water's kind of high. When you get to the other side, what do you? It's a big room in there. Oh. That's kind of the thing. Is that
open to the light?
The light from the water lights up the room. So it's really weird. That's why you kind of go, because it's really awesome. The thing is, there's nothing to hold on to. You're treading water in that room. So it's like,
oh, the room is deep water.
Yeah, you can't touch it. It's a huge lake in there, Dang. So you can't touch the bottom at all. And but if the water level is high enough where that cave or the hallway, we'll call it, is like this, where you can just barely it gets like, oh, this is kind of nerve-wracking for sure. But sometimes it's real low and it's cool, you just swim through. But if it's like your first time or you have a little bit of claustrophobia in water like that, it'll jam you up for sure. But I never had a problem with that one. It's what you said. When you can't move.
Yeah.
But if you can move, also you can just stay there. It's weird. It's like a psychological thing,
Yeah, no, it's definitely a psychological thing.
But yeah, it's, I get that every once in a while on the plane too.
The restraint machine. So I guess that would be really effective against some people that have a little claustrophobia.
Or they would just go nuts.
The thing is though, okay, let's say all these methods are bad, right? Let's say all these methods of reform are bad.
Yes, I feel good about saying that, yes.
Okay, and then you say, okay, if I was in that situation, I would do everything I could to get out of the scenario where, like, okay, I got arrested and I got put in the restraint machine and I got the beat with a paddle and I got all those things happen to me. Guess what? You know what I'm going to do is try and stay clean a little bit, right? Get on a little bit of a path, sure. A better path.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
It didn't work at all.
No.
At all. He didn't care.
Yeah. Well, it kind of makes sense that, like, what did he say after the snorting pole or whatever? Like,
you just
blood
on
your back and murder on your mind or whatever. Yeah. That seems like, because even the claustrophobia thing on the what's that called, the restraint situation, 4 hours every session all day. Like after a while you're gonna get used to that, or you're gonna go so nuts that you're just gonna faint or I don't know, something like that. Either way, there's a part of your mind, I would think, I don't know, this is just what it feels like listening to it. I feel like I would just be so nuts at the end. Like I wouldn't care about that restraint thing. I would just care about like murdering the person or something. I could see how that could go.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally
could go that way.
I would probably try not to go there anymore, but that's just me.
Yeah. So maybe as a reformer, if you cross the line and you make someone snap, now you're no longer being productive.
No.
This is true with your kids. And maybe you haven't experienced this yet, but you can like push your kids to a point where they don't care.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'll take this away. And then all of a sudden they go, I don't care. Take it. They throw their toy, the toy that you're threatening, they throw it at you.
Yeah.
Take it.
Remember The Breakfast Club? Remember that movie?
I do remember.
Okay, remember the part, that guy John Bender? What was his real? I forget the actor's name. But anyway, I'm just drawing a blank. Bender is his name. And he's
which character?
The bad guy, the bad kid.
Okay, yeah.
And he's like, hey, did Barry Manilow did you raid Barry Manilow's wardrobe? And he's like, I'll give you the answer to that next Saturday. Saying like, you got another detention here next Saturday. And then he says something else. He goes, then you got another Saturday. And he's like, well, I'm free this Saturday. You know, he did that. He was after all, he's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
He's like, you really think
And then he's holding up the horn. 2 months, Bender. I got you 2 months.
Yeah. That was good. That was a good part there.
So, yes, you can't push it too far. And, obviously, from a leadership perspective, we'll just go for a little leadership perspective here. There are things you can do to the people that work for you where they won't care anymore.
Yeah.
And now you're done. Yeah. You've lost control over them.
Yep.
You've lost control over them. So don't do that. He talks about this electric shock too. They call it the hummingbird. First, an ordinary steel bathtub in which 4 or 5 inches of ice cold water. The victim is laid down in there and chained hand and foot. Then the chief torturer enters the scene. He is dressed in ordinary clothes and has only a rubber slicker and a pair of rubber gloves on his hands. In his hands, he holds a common sponge. The sponge is connected to an electric battery by wires. The switch is turned on and the torturer advances on the victim. He first begins on the soles of the feet by gently rubbing the charged sponge there and then gradually working his way up to the body and to the head. The sensations to the victim are that there seems to be millions of red-hot needles sticking into him. The agony is intense, 2 or 3 minutes, and the victim is ready for the grave or the madhouse. Yet there is not a single mark or bruise on his whole body. A physician stands beside. This is sick. A physician stands beside the victim and every few seconds feels the pulse and examines him. When he judges that the victim is exactly on the verge of madness or death, he gives the signal to switch off the current. Then the victim is thrown into a cell where he is left for a few days or weeks. Yeah.
That's weird. The sponge, how they put the sponge there.
Yeah.
Like on Lethal Weapon 1, he got rigs with that. Remember?
Yeah.
And I remember, but he had. That's what it made me think of when he had the sponges.
Yeah.
And he's in the shower all tied up like that, and he keeps like hitting them.
Yeah.
He's like, hit him again. Yeah, those sponges. I wonder what that's about though. The sponge, it conducts the electricity.
Yeah, because it's filled with water. Water conducts. It doesn't leave a direct mark.
It's just hitting you with like a big
shock
pillow of shock. Dang.
It continues on. He eventually gets out of that prison, and he actually broke out of that prison. And then he's just on like full crime mode. I don't even know what goes beyond crime mode, but just full stealing, raping, murdering, swindling. He steals enough money. He works on a bunch of different boats and eventually steals enough money to buy a yacht. So he bought a yacht. Yeah. And I don't know how big the yacht was, but it wasn't small. Mm-hmm. And here we go back to the book. On my yacht, I had quarters for 5 people, but I was alone for a while. Then I figured it would be a good plan to hire a few sailors to work for me, get them out on my yacht, get them drunk, commit sodomy on them, rob them, and kill them. This I'd done. Every day or two, I would get plenty of booze by robbing other yachts there. The Barber 2 was one of them. I robbed her a dozen or so others around there. I was hitting the booze pretty hard myself at that time. Every day or two, I would go to New York and hang around 25th Street and size up the sailors. Whenever I saw a couple who were about my size and seemed to have money, I would hire them to work on my yacht. I would always promise a big pay and easy work. What they got was something else. I would take them and their clothes and gear out to my yacht at City Island. There we would go and wine and dine, and when they were drunk enough, I would go to bed. Or they would go to bed. When they were asleep, I would get my .45 Colt automatic army pistol. This I stole from Mr. Taft's house and blow their brains out. Then I would take out a rope and tie a rock on them and put them into my rowboat, row them out in the main channel about 1 mile and drop them overboard. They are there yet, 10 of them. I worked that racket for about 3 weeks. Eventually gets on another ship, loses that, kind of gets... people are suspect. He gets on a ship to Europe. From Europe, he goes to Africa. In Africa, he buys a girl. I paid a big price for her. I bought her from her mother and father for about $8 in American money. The reason I paid such a big price for her was because she was a virgin. Yeah, so she said. She was about 11 or 12 years old. I took her to my shack the first night and took her back to her father's shack the next. I demanded my money back because they had deceived me by saying the girl was a virgin. I didn't get my money back, but they gave me another younger girl. This girl was about 8 years old. I took her to my shack, and maybe she was a virgin, but it didn't look like it to me. I took her back and quit looking for any more virgins. I looked for a boy. I found one. He was our table waiter. I educated him into the art of sodomy as practiced by civilized people, but he was only a savage and didn't appreciate the benefits of civilization. He told my boss, and the boss man fired me quick, but before he did, I licked the hell out of him. The boy, 11 or 12, came bumming. Another boy, about 11 or 12, came bumming around. He was looking for something. He found it too. I took him out to a gravel pit about a quarter mile from the main camp of the Sinclair Oil Company. I left him there, but first I committed sodomy on him and then killed him. His brains were coming out of his ears when I left him, and he will never be any deader. He is still there. He ends up murdering another 6 people in Africa on a boat. He chartered a canoe and then kills everyone in it, and then signs on to a ship that's heading back to New York. That was the summer of 1922. He arrives back in America. Back to the book. In Salem, Massachusetts, I murdered an 11 or 12-year-old boy by beating his brains out with a rock. I tried a little sodomy on him first. I left him laying there with his brains coming out of his ears. Went down towards New York, robbing and hell-raising as I came. In January or February of 1923, I got a job as a watchman at 220 Yonkers Avenue, Yonkers, New York. While there, I met a young boy of 14 or 15 whose name was George and whose home was and is in Yonkers. I started to teach him the fine art of sodomy, but I found he had been taught about it all, and he liked it fine. I kept him with me until I left that job in April of 1923. The kid George got scared, and I let him go home to Yonkers. When he got there, he told the police all he knew about me, which wasn't much, but it was enough for the cops to come looking for me. They caught me in my yacht at Nyack. They took me, boat, and all my plunder to Yonkers jail there, charged me with sodomy, burglary, robbery, and trying to break jail there. In and out again. He gets out. A few days later, I went to New Haven where I killed another boy. I committed a little more sodomy on him and then tied his belt around his neck and strangled him, picked him up when he was dead and threw his body over behind some bushes. Eventually, he does his time. He gets trial for the sodomy, burglary, and robbery, pleads guilty, and immediately given the limit of the law, 5 years. At once I was sent to Sing Sing, and then from Sing Sing he gets sent to another prison called Dannemora, which is a notorious prison. It says in the book, of all the prisons, Dannemora was the one and only designed specifically to punish. And so now this gets really interesting because he's in this really bad prison, and there's a description that's not from him. That's just part of the book, part of the information in the book, talking about Dannemora and how bad it is there. And then he's done all this heinous acts that he should be killed for over and over again. And here he is, going back to the book. I attempted to escape. I failed in my attempt, but in doing so, I fell about 30 feet to a concrete walk, breaking both my ankles, both my legs, fracturing my spine, and rupturing myself. In this condition, I was carried to the prison hospital where I lay for 5 days and was carried out and dumped into a cell without any medical or surgical attention whatever. My broken bones were not set. My ankles and legs were not put into a cast. In fact, nothing was done except give me a bottle of liniment, which would have done no good if I had been able to rub it on myself. The doctor never came near me, and no one else was allowed to do anything for me. In that condition, I was left for 8 months. At the end of the time, the bones had knitted together so I could stagger around on a pair of crutches. So it's like he's complaining about his maltreatment, right? Mm-hmm. I got injured and they didn't take care of me. It's like, hey, bro, Yeah. You don't get any good treatment. At the end of 14 months of constant agony, I was taken to the hospital where I was operated on for my rupture and one of my testicles was cut out. 5 days after my operation, I tried to see if my sexual organs were still in good order. I got caught trying to commit sodomy on another prisoner. For that, I was thrown out of the hospital and dumped into a cell where I suffered more agony for many months. Always in pain, never a civil answer from anyone, always a snarl or a curse or a lying, hypocritical promise which was never kept. Crawling around like a snake with a broken back, seething with hatred and a lust for revenge. 5 years of my life of this kind. The last 2 years and 4 months confined in isolation with nothing to do except brood upon what I thought was the wrongs that had been done to me, not allowed to receive letters or visits from friends. When the prison inspectors came to investigate conditions and complaints, they were told I was a degenerate, that I suffered from delusions, that I was insane, so they would pay no attention to me or anything that I or anyone else ever complained of. This went on for all of my 5 years, and the more they misused me, the more I was filled with the spirit of hatred and revenge. I was so full of hate that there was no room in me for such feelings as love, pity, kindness, or honor or decency. I hated everyone I saw. Again, it's a guy that he only sees the pain that's been caused to him, but apparently doesn't see any of the pain that he's causing anybody else.
Yeah.
Zero empathy.
Yeah.
Zero.
Doesn't it sort of, could it seem, or could it happen like this with him, where, when he's young, he gets beat down.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously not shown much affection.
Mm-hmm.
That's an assumption, obviously, but beat down. So now he has this hatred. So now he inflicts pain on quote unquote others, right? Because of the hatred he has or whatever. So it's kind of like him getting even. For sure. For lack of a better term. So he gets even, and then he gets punished for that, right? Obviously, because you can't commit crimes like that. So he gets punished. So now he thinks it's uneven now. Hey, it's just the feeling. He's not like, So now he's like, now me being punished for what I did, by the way, but me being punished is giving me even more hate. Now I got to, seek vengeance for that. Then he does it. Then of course he just keeps doing it. Yeah. So it's like this cycle.
Well, there's another cycle here. And the cycle is he's blaming everyone else for the situation that he's in.
Oh yeah. That's how,
he's blaming and at a certain point, sure, let's blame that first state penitentiary that he was in when he was a kid, the state school. Let's put some blame on them. Okay. Yeah. But you got out of that. Yeah. And you had another opportunity to get on the right path. And then what do? You just blame. Yeah. And the more you're blaming other people, you're putting yourself into a downward spiral that he's never going to get out of, obviously.
Yeah.
And now he blames the whole human race. I mean, it's real easy just to sort of, he only writes about it for 3 sentences, but like, in New Haven, I raped and murdered an 11-year-old boy.
Yeah.
Like, no, you don't get any mercy now. Yeah. And you can't blame anyone else for doing that. That's no one else's fault. Yeah. You did that.
Yes. Yeah. But in his mind,
for sure.
Like, how like when you let's say you flick your friend on the head joking around. Right, you flick him on the head. Okay. You're joking around. Then your friend's like,
should be interesting.
Your friend's like, hey, that was kind of hard, So he like flicks you, and you're like super hard, and you're like, hey, I didn't flick you on the head that hard. So you smack him, and it turns into this big fight. And who's to blame, right?
Yeah.
Both guys feel like, hey, I flicked you. I was just joking. You didn't have to flick me that hard. The other guy's like, why'd you flick me in the first place? Kind of thing. So, and I'm not saying that that's what happened, but in his mind, that's probably what it feels like.
Oh, for sure, that's what it feels like. For sure, that's what it feels like. And we all can feel like that at one time or another. We think, it's this person's fault. It's that person's fault. Yeah. It's my parents. It's the school system. It's the whatever. It's society.
Yeah.
Right? It's society.
Yeah.
It's every other human being. Like, that's where he's at right now. He hated everyone I saw.
Yeah.
That's where he's at.
So it's like he's the victim.
And he's the victim. And you just listen to, I mean, it's so clear when he's talking about all these medical problems that he's the victim.
Yeah.
He's the victim. Whereas if he would have just swapped his attitude early on and said, okay, what about what's happening right now, even the first, why did he get sent to the state penitentiary or to the state school system? Because he stole a gun, ran away, ripped off a family of their stuff. Yeah. Like, oh, if you do that, you go to prison. But he didn't see that. This is his fault. Yeah, that wasn't his fault. Yeah. He did that because he was living in a bad home. Yep. It's like, okay, at some point you have to take ownership of what's going on in your world. Yeah. And you can't just continually blame other people. If you do, eventually, you know who's at fault? Everyone in the world but you.
Yeah. It's true.
So let's not get there. I'll tell you what, it was a pretty good transition for when I joined the Navy. That's one thing. And I've talked about how when I joined the Navy, it's like a clean slate. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter what you did. And that was a really positive thing for me because all of a sudden, and it's a very cause and effect when you're going through like Navy boot camp or any kind of boot camp, any kind of military indoctrination. If you don't do what you're supposed to do, you get punished for it. If you do what you're supposed to do, you either A, don't get punished at a minimum, or you get some type of reward. Yeah. And it's all set up that way purposely. Yeah. But it's very easy. It was very easy for me to comprehend as an 18-year-old kid going, oh, if I do this right, I will be rewarded. If I do this wrong, I will be punished. This is on me. And then then the next thing that they build on top of that is, if I let my team do something wrong, we will all get punished. Yeah. If we do things correctly, we will receive, at a minimum, no punishment and possibly some type of reward. It was very easy for me to assemble those pieces in my young brain. And let's face it, when you're 18 years old, I mean, my brain wasn't all that developed, right? I mean, right, like physiologically speaking, the male, like what is it? The male frontal cortex isn't fully formed until they're like 25, right? Didn't you tell me that?
Yes.
Yeah. So there you go. So there I was, 18, and I yet was able to figure out, okay, wait a second. If I do this, it's on me. If I get punished, it's my fault. If our team gets punished, and again, that's a little jump. They kind of bring you through that little phase of like, okay, now you're responsible for you. You understand that? And once you understand that, it's like, okay, now you're responsible for your team. And some people don't make that transition. Some people, within the team, oh, it wasn't my fault. It was Jimmy's fault. Yeah. Right? And as you stay in the military longer, or as you go in any workforce, eventually you realize, oh, okay, if I don't work as a team, we're all going to get punished. Yeah. So I need to help the team. He's not learning any of this.
No, he's not helping any team.
That's awful. Back to the book. My whole mind was bent on figuring out ways to annoy and punish my enemies, and everybody was my enemy. I had no friends. That was the frame of mind I was in when my 5 years was up and I was turned loose to go anywhere I wanted to go. My intention was to rob, rape, and kill everybody I could, anybody and everybody. And he goes through these long kind of plans of putting bombs inside tunnels and had to get a gas mask. He was going to use poison gas, and he was going to steal so much money. And then with this bunch of money that he was going to get from robbing all these people in this plot that he has, with that, he says, with unlimited funds in my hands, I then intended to steal millions of dollars and kill millions of people. This I intended to do by starting a war between England and the USA. Sounds fantastic, all right, but I'm positive he could have done it. He goes through his whole plot of how he was going to make that happen. He was going to bomb a British ship that was, like here peacefully, bomb it and make it look like America did it. When diplomatic relationships were already strained, that was his plan.
It's crazy.
I used to spend all my time figuring out how I could murder the most people with the least harm and expense to myself, and I finally thought of a way to kill off the whole town, men, women, children, and even cats and dogs. And he goes through another big plan about using arsenic and dead hogs and put them in the water supply. I mean, he goes through like detailed plans. Now, this was some interesting, his perception of what it was like. He's back in jail again. And I forget what for this time, but for all this crap that he's doing all the time, all these crimes he's committing. Back to the book. The underworld code is very simple. It is never squeal. Don't be a stool pigeon, a rat, or an informer. All crooks want everybody else to believe that they are square. Cops are the same. They all wish everybody else to think they act from principle. They're always telling everyone they meet about how much principle they have. It is against their principle to do this or that. The queer part of it is that they not only want others to believe this, but they believe it themselves. But the real truth of the matter is that they deceive themselves and mistake policy for principle. When crooks are square with anyone, it is because it is for their own interest to be so. It is good policy. When it ceases to be in their own interest to square with another one, then it becomes time to change their tactics, and they aren't slow in doing it either. It makes no difference to them who they snitch on, no matter if they've been loyal to each other through a whole lifetime as partners and friends, no matter if they send their friends to prison or to hell by way of rope or chair. That cuts no ice. They are looking out for their own precious skins. And this is a guy also that doesn't trust anybody.
Yeah.
So, and that's actually what he said. I mean, certainly you can't say that about it. You can say that about a lot of people, but there's all kinds of criminals that never give up never give anyone else's names, never rat on anybody else. And they get the book thrown at them and they take it.
Yeah.
Back to the book. This is interesting. Every child has some criminal tendencies. It is your place to correct those traits and teach them the right way to live while they are young and their minds are forming. Then when they reach the age of reason and action, it will be quite natural for them to live clean, upright, honorable lives. In that way, you will stop crime at its source before it begins. As a child is very easily led. Any child, if properly taught, will live the way he is taught to live. All criminals are merely overgrown children. It is in your hands to make us or break us. We, by our own efforts, are failures in life simply because we don't know any better. We don't know how to live decent, upright lives. Heredity has very little to do with the shaping of our lives. The main causes of why we are what we are is because of our improper teaching, lack of knowledge, and our environment. Every man's philosophy is colored by his environment. If you don't want us to rob, rape, and murder you, then it is your place to see that the mental and moral misfits are properly taught a sufficient amount of useful and sensible knowledge to put into the proper environment where they can be best fitted to exist in life. So there you go. The nature-nurture argument, Panzram, all nurture. Yeah. It's all how you're raised. He goes on, I was born a normal human being. My parents were ignorant, and through their improper teachings and improper environment, I was gradually led into the wrong way of living. Little by little, from bad to worse. I was sent to reform school at age 11. From that day to this, all of my life has been lived among moral and mental misfits. All of my associates, all of my surroundings, the atmosphere of deceit, treachery, brutality, degeneracy, hypocrisy, and everything that is bad and nothing that is good. It is unnatural that I should have absorbed these things, and I have become what I am today, a treacherous, degenerate, brutal, savage human, devoid of all decent feeling, absolutely without conscience, moral, pity, sympathy, principle, or any single good trait. Why am I what I am? I'll tell you why. I did not make myself what I am. Others had the making of me. Everyone else's fault. Yep. And I'm not in the power to control it, right? I mean, at this point, he recognizes what he is, but he doesn't make any effort to reform himself.
Yeah, it's kind of those two, like, even with extreme ownership, right? When you're working with a team, when you say it's easy to blame others, and especially when it is their fault at certain times. It's like their fault that this happened and that happened. It's like a philosophy, right? It's like an approach. It's a certain approach where if you say, okay, whatever, it's their fault that this happened or whatever.
It's really hard to come up with a situation when you're a leader of a team and it's the team's fault.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to come up with one lately.
Yeah. So, and to say it's
maybe you can.
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, it is. Well, okay, we'll go with this guy.
A guy on Twitter.
Yeah.
He said, "Hey, man, why are you giving all this hate to the machine gunners shooting outside their field of fire?" Because I use that example a lot.
Yeah.
Hey, the machine gunner shoots outside of his field of fire.
Yeah.
That's the machine gunner's fault, right? No. And I said to him, "Hey, man, I don't hate machine gunners. I hate the officers that blame the machine gunner when the machine gunner doesn't know where he's supposed to be shooting.
Yeah.
That's not the machine gunner's fault.
Yeah.
That's your fault, boss."
Yeah. So
continue on about the situation that you're trying to refer to. Because this is like a typical little thing that I'll hear from people. It's like, well, sometimes I gotta take ownership, even though it's really their fault. If that's what you think, you're wrong.
Okay. Yeah. No,
so you're wrong.
No, okay. I dig it, but because right now I'm not saying about whose fault it is. That's not the point I'm trying to make. It's more that he's right. It is because of them, like the way his parents raised him did cause him to be like this. It caused him to be like this. Didn't cause him to be like, it didn't, like, his parents raising him didn't make him, sodomize that kid or whatever. They didn't make him do it, but the way they raised him caused him, just cause and effect, straight up caused him to be like that, quote unquote. Now, it's his fault. Yes, it's his fault that he's doing all these things, because you can not do it. That's possible to just not do it that day or at all or whatever. So yeah, as far as fault and blaming, yes, okay.
You're going Sam Harris free will on me.
Well, see, the thing is, I guess what I'm saying is, like, if you don't go into the
lack of free will.
Yeah, lack of free will. No, well, not necessarily. I'm just basically isolating the blaming part of it and then the cause and effect part of it, kind of thing. Because in that case, he's right. Like, what he's saying is correct. As long as he's not saying, and it's their fault and it's not my fault. I'm not,
he is saying that, actually.
Yes. Okay. So push that aside. He's right.
I did not make myself what I am. Others had the making of me. It's everyone else's fault that I'm like this.
Yeah. That's not extreme ownership right there.
No.
But go cause and effect on them.
Here's my point. Because this is a gray area, right? We're in a gray area. Here's the problem. If he looks at it, if the only lens that he looks at it through is this is everyone else's fault and he's not to blame, then guess what? He's not going to make any changes. Yeah. If he had a little bit, if he just looked at the situation and said, you know what? All these things happened, but some of this is because of me. Some of this is because of the actions that I've taken. And I can now change my behavior so I don't stay in this mode of operating right now. That's the difference. Yeah. And he never makes that change. He never makes that different. He never sees it that way. The only thing he sees is that it's everyone else's fault. And this is the thing. He goes, you can see it gradually increases. He's going from like, oh, I just hate the teachers and I just hate the wardens, and eventually he hates everybody because it's everyone else's fault. Yeah. Even people he doesn't even know because they're a member of the human race. He hates them. Yeah. That's why personal responsibility is so important to teach to kids.
Yes, sir, it is.
It's so important to teach to kids. And that's one thing I think I learned. I mean, obviously I got some of it from my parents, but it was really crystal clear when I came in the military, because it's black and white. That the gray area is gone. When you go through some kind of military indoctrination, the gray area is gone. You mess this up, it's your fault. You're going to get punished for it. Yeah.
But you still get guys, right? That
for sure.
Drill sergeant is riding me or whatever.
Or, Billy should have done this. Jones should have done that. Right. It's like, okay, but it doesn't matter because you're going to pay the man.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Back to the book. I have only a little knowledge, but I have as much intelligence as the average person, and I know I was taught wrong. I could have been taught properly, and if I had been, I sure feel I would have led a far different life than I have done. You are to blame more so than I. Straight up. You. He's talking to us. He's talking to the general human, the race of human beings. That's my belief. If you are going to go on teaching others as you have taught me, then you must suffer the same as I. Here we go. He is at this point on trial. And this is from I think this is one of the ones from a newspaper clipping or a report, but it's another part. This isn't Panzram's journal. This is some of the additional information. Back to the book. On the stand, Panzram's eyes slid toward the table where his pistol and burglar tools lay. Prosecutor Collins whispered to an assistant who hurried over and removed the exhibits to a safer place. The arms of the witness chair disappeared under Panzram's huge hands as he faced the jury, ignoring everyone else in the courtroom. You people got me here charged with housebreaking and larceny. I'm guilty. I broke in and I stole. What I didn't steal, I smashed. If the owner had come home, I would have knocked his brains out. Panzram's eyes took on a strange depth as he watched the jury. There's something else you ought to know. While you were trying me here, I was trying all of you too. I've found you guilty. Some of you I've executed. If I live, I'll execute some more of you. I hate the whole human race, he said evenly. A juror gasped. Panzram's round head suddenly swung toward the prosecutor, who looked alert and suspicious. You think I'm playing crazy, don't you? I'm not. I know right from wrong. No delusions. I don't hear anything you don't hear. My conscience doesn't bother me. I have no conscience. I believe the whole human race should be exterminated. I'll do my best to do it every chance I get. The courtroom was now numb as Panzram turned to the jurors once more. Now I've done my duty. You do yours. So he gets a long prison sentence, and when he gets into prison, he actually kills one of the civilian workers there in prison, like a guy that just is like a maintenance guy who runs the laundry, and has a beef and kills him. And this is where we start. This is one of the letters. So I talked about the guy Henry Lesser, who was a guard in one of the prisons he was in, who formed a relationship with him. And he actually says a couple times that this is the only guy that didn't try and take something from him. I think the whole thing started off, he gave him $1 to buy cigarettes or whatever. And no one, according to him, no one had ever done anything nice for Panzram in his whole life. And this guard was the first guy to do it. So he develops a relationship with him. And so they write letters back and forth. And here's the excerpt of one of those many letters back to the book. The real truth of the matter is that I haven't the least desire to reform. Very much the reverse of that is true. I would not reform if the front gate was open right now and if I was given $1 million when I stepped out. I have no desire to do good or to be good. I am just as mean now as I can be, and the only reason I am no worse is because I lack the power and the proper opportunity for meanness. If I had the power and the opportunities, then I would soon show you what real meanness was. You overlook the fact that the law and a great many people have been trying their damnedest for 25 years to reform me. I am tired of having people try to reform me. What I want to do is reform them, and I think the best way to reform them is to put them out of their misery. It took me 36 years to be like I am now. Then how do you figure that I could, if I wanted to, change from black to white in the twinkling of an eye? Another letter. Same theme. I have no desire to reform under such conditions as would be required of me the way the laws of this country are today. I do not care to live any longer if I must live in prison. I would far rather die and go to hell if that's where people like me go after death. I have very thoroughly considered this matter, and I assure you now what I say is the truth. I have confessed 21 different cold-blooded, premeditated murders, hundreds of cases of arson, burglaries, robberies, rapes, and other crimes. The law has by this time looked them up and verified the truth of my various confessions. My philosophy of life is such that very few people ever get, and it is so deeply ingrained and burned into me that I don't believe I could ever change my beliefs. The things I have done to others, the things I have had done to me by others, and the things I have done to them can never be forgotten or forgiven either by me or others. I can't forget and I won't forgive. I couldn't if I wanted to. The law is in the same fix. My belief is that the life without liberty is not worth having. If the law won't kill me, I shall kill myself. I fully realize that I am not fit to live among people in a civilized community. I have no desire to do so. If I had any choice in living any longer, the only way I would consent to do so would be to get clear out and away from all civilized people. I am so set in my ways that I cannot adapt myself to the ways of other people, so that the only way for me to do would be to live by myself without any human companionship whatever. He actually describes this island that he's kind of spent a little time on when he was down in South America. He's like, send me there if you wanted to send me somewhere. Goes back. So now he'd killed that other guy, Warnke, the civilian, and now he's going to trial for that murder. And this is a newspaper report of that trial. Back to the book. The commission heard the hard-boiled giant tell of the fun which he received in killing a man, and there isn't a man in this room I wouldn't kill, the cruel-visaged, steel-eyed man told the commission. I'm mad, plenty mad right now. I don't believe there's any good in any man. I'd like to have the opportunity to go away, gain power and brains, and then I'd like to kill off the rest of the world, the convict said. Dr. Perry asked the giant if he believed himself better than the rest of mankind. Hell no, was the reply. I've checked up on myself lately and I know that I'm probably worse than the rest of you. I have no desire to live. If you would hang me, my troubles would be over and I would be better off. But don't you fear hellfire? A member of the commission inquired. You haven't been able to prove to me that there is such a thing, Panzram answered. The man boasted in court of killing 21 persons and vowed that when his parents living, he would kill them, quote, for bringing me into the world. There are two things in this world that count as powerful, money and knowledge. If I could get enough money, I would buy brains because brains are for sale. I could get a brainy chemist and I would have them prepare me a lot of poison gas and germs. With these, I would be able to exterminate a great mass of human beings. Then I would kill myself. Society should build a great monument because I have never propagated my kind. So that's what his little excerpt of what his trial was like. This, he was done. I mean, he just did not care. Back to the book, and this is the book itself. The court convened again the next morning, and the judge, having been given no alternative by the hard rural jury, looked down at the defendant and pronounced him guilty with no mention of life-saving phrase without capital punishment. Panzram had nothing to say concerning the sentence. Hopkins then ordered that he be remanded to the care of the warden at the federal penitentiary at Leavenworth, there to be confined until the 5th day of September, when, between the hours of 6 and 9 o'clock in the morning, you shall be taken to some suitable place within the confines of the penitentiary and hanged by the neck until dead. The judge then announced the 90-day interval to allow for any bill of objection and appeal. Before the defense attorney could speak, Panzram said swiftly, I don't want any attorney to file for a new trial or appeal anything. I am satisfied with the verdict. So, while he's now on death row, there's a delegation of people that are against capital punishment. And they start fighting to get him off death row. Mm. And he writes them a letter. And here's a little part of that letter. On February 1st, 1929, I began serving this sentence at the U.S. Penitentiary at Leavenworth, Kansas. On June 20th, 1929, I murdered one man, a civilian employee of the prison by the name of Warnke. And at the same time and place, I also attempted to murder a dozen other men, both guards and convicts. The only reason I did not kill them was also because I couldn't catch them. If I am given another trial, or if the death sentence should be commuted to life imprisonment, either in penitentiary or an insane asylum, it will be against my will. And then he goes on to try to explain to them, because he doesn't want them to think that he's crazy. Because if he's crazy, then he's going to get, insane asylum or, reason of insanity. Back to the book. I shall try and convince you that I am quite sane at this time. I am at this time 38 years old, a big, powerful man, strong in both body and mind. My physical fitness is not as good as it once was, but my mental facilities are unimpaired in any way. I've never used drugs of any kind or any type. I am and always have been a very moderate drinker of liquor, practically a total abstainer. I've never taken any disease of any kind which would have the tendency to weaken my intellect. I have never been addicted to any habits of sexual excesses of any kind over which I didn't have complete control of myself. I choose to die here and now by being hanged by the neck until I'm dead. I prefer that I die that way, and if I have a soul, and if that soul should burn in hell for 1,000,000 years, still I prefer that to a lingering, agonizing death in some prison dungeon or a padded cell in a madhouse. I do not believe that being hanged by the neck until dead is a barbaric or inhuman punishment. I look forward to it as a real pleasure and a big relief for me. I do not feel bad or unhappy about it in any way. Every day since I received that sentence, I felt pretty good. I feel good right now, and I believe that when my last hour comes, I will dance out of my dungeon and onto the scaffold with a smile on my face and happiness in my heart. Another reason why I believe that this sentence should be carried out is because I believe it is justice, and I am quite sincere when I say that this is the first and only time in my life of battling with the law that I ever did get justice from the law. One other thing I am going to tell you before I stop this letter, and that is this. The only thanks that you or your kind will ever get from me for your efforts on my behalf is that I wish you all had one neck and that I had my hands on it. I would sure put you out of your misery, just the same as I have done with numbers of other people. I have no desire whatever to reform myself. My only desire is to reform people who try to reform me, and I believe that the only way to do reform to people is to kill them. My motto is rape 'em all, rob 'em all, and kill 'em all. I am very truly yours, Carl Panzram. Another letter, I think it was the next to the last letter that he wrote to Lesser, Henry Lesser. He says, I had no choice about coming into this world, and nearly all of my 38 years in it have had very little to say and do about how I should live my life. People have driven me into doing everything I have ever done. Now the time has come when I refuse to be driven any further. So again, I've only done what I've done because of what other people have done to me. Mm-hmm. That's not on me. Zero responsibility. Everything I've ever done is because of other people. Ever. It's a slippery slope that you just tried to step on a couple minutes ago.
Yes, it is actually. And
you're thinking about it, aren't you?
Yeah, but I'm not wrong. Because I'm not talking about the blame. I'm talking about cause and effect. But here's the thing, though. Cause and effect is kind of like, it's easy to start blaming. You caused this. See what I'm saying? Technically. I don't want to split hairs, but technically there's a difference.
My point is, if you have I work with people all the time, and this is the most important transition that people make in their brain. Is whether you're a business leader, whether you're talking about your personal life, whether you're talking about the family, whatever you're talking about, the transition that you make from doing what you're saying right now, which is like, well, it's actually their fault. If that's in the back of your mind, okay. If that's in the back of your mind, like, okay, The problem is it grows.
Yeah.
The problem is you use that. The problem is, next thing you know, it's not just that's their fault. It's this that's their fault, and it's the other thing that's their fault, and it's my team's fault, and it's not my fault.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to be clear though, I'm not saying the fault part of it. The fault and the blaming, that part of it literally has nothing to do with it.
So what are you saying?
Cause and effect. They're two different things.
No.
Look, put it this way. Look, okay. And I used to kind of say this as a joke where, I don't know, let's say I did something, right? And then I'd be like, well, it's not my fault. It's, my parents' fault for having me. Oh, but it's their fault. Actually, it's my grandparents' fault for having them. Oh, no, it's my great-grand, and you start just blaming every little factor that contributed to this result. Every little factor, right? So basically, to kind of break that apart, it's like, yeah, if my parents didn't have me, this wouldn't have happened. It's true. But the thing is, you can't just start point blame as far as assigning blame goes. I'm not assigning blame if I'm saying, hey, this is a factor or whatever, unless I'm doing it as a joke. You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
So it's like, okay, so when you do cross the line to start assigning blame, that's when you can't be like, okay, it's everything else. You got to blame yourself. But let's say you're not assigning blame. You're just maybe analyzing it from an objective perspective. See what I'm saying? You can identify all kinds of causes. See what I'm saying? And they're probably true.
Okay.
But not having anything to do with causing blame or assigning blame or saying whose fault it is. See what I'm saying?
Check.
Okay, it's just another example of how like you or we, whatever. When I talk to you a lot of the time, sometimes we'll take a scenario and I'll just sort of marvel at the different working parts of this scenario. Like, oh, isn't it interesting how this is this and this is this, but you could do this and look at it this way too. Even though it has nothing to do with me, and it has nothing to do with any kind of actions to be taken or nothing like that. It's essentially just analyzing the scenario and being interested in it. Versus you always look at the scenario like, okay, yeah, cool. That's cool. You analyze it, but what do? Your attitude is a real take action kind of approach. So I think that's where we're getting some misfires. See what I'm saying? You think that it's like, I want to base some action to be taken upon the way I'm looking at it, when it requires no action. It's just the way to sort of look at it, But if you want to take action, like, okay, so who do we blame? That's the beginning of taking action in a way. Who do we blame? What do we got to fix? Who do we got to fix? Whatever. To move forward, to fix the situation, to, whatever, rectify it. Then you got to be like, okay, I got to identify the problem that I can change. And then, yeah, in that case, that problem's going to be yourself. It's the best way.
And if it's not, then you're not going to solve anything.
Yeah.
You're just going to sit around and blame people.
Yeah. But does that make sense?
Maybe. I don't recommend it.
Nah, yeah. And that's the thing.
Much.
Yeah. And again, even that was saying I don't recommend it. That's super indicative of just like, yeah, you don't recommend that as a problem solving technique. That's a take action approach right there. See what I'm saying? It's kind of like if we came to a stoplight and then the stoplight's red. I'm like, wow, isn't that red stoplight super nice? Like, it's a beautiful color of red. And you're going to be like, yeah, like, but it means to stop. So we're stopped. I'm like, no, I know, but isn't it kind of beautiful? Then it turns green. Wow, isn't that a beautiful green light? And you're like, yeah, but it means to go. And I'll be like, cool, but it's a pretty nice shade of green. You see what I'm saying? See what I'm saying? It's like two different perspectives.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you'd roll through the green light and,
I'd go get after it. All right. We'll leave that one at that. All right. Obviously, the attempts to save Carl Panzram were ceased, and here's how his life ends according to this book. At Leavenworth, the lights of the isolation had burned into a pale gray dawn on September 5th when Panzram heard the distant rattle of footsteps. It was not quite 6 o'clock. Guard Ballard went over to the steel door leading to an outer corridor and peered through the small barred window. Warden White's voice was heard, and the guard turned a brass key in the lock. The door swung open. White entered the isolation at the head of the procession of some 20 persons, including guards and newspaper reporters. Immediately behind the warden was Marshal McKeever and the tall government hangman, carrying the leather harness over one arm. White stopped in front of Panzram's cell. The spectators pressed themselves discreetly against the opposite wall as Panzram faced them, searching through the wire mesh with his hostile eyes. He saw two men in clerical garb on the fringes of the crowd and at once began to roar at White. "Are there any Bible-backed cocksuckers in here?" "I thought you might change your mind," White apologized. "These gentlemen came a long way to offer you comfort." "Get him out," shouted Panzram. "I don't mind being hanged, but I don't need any Bible-backed hypocrites around me. Run him out, Warden, or you'll have one hell of a time getting me out of this cell. Every man I get a hand on is going to the hospital." White knew Panzram was within a condemned man's traditional rights regarding witnesses of his own execution. The disappointed clergymen were escorted out. "All right," Panzram said, "let's get going. What are we stalling for?" White motioned the guards and newsmen to proceed to the exercise yard as Ballard opened Panzram's cell. Panzram helped his escorts fasten the leather corset. "Anything you want to say?" asked the hangman, fumbling with a strap. Panzram snapped impatiently. "Yes, hurry it up, you Hoosier bastard. I could hang a dozen men while you're fooling around." In the yard, the newsman took hurried notes. The scaffold looked strange and somehow unexpected. Dew glistened on the boards that had the raw, temporary look of a structure erected for a county fair. In less than a minute, the back door of the isolation opened, and Panzram emerged between Ballard and the hangman. Panzram was almost running ahead, half dragging his taller escorts. White and the marshal hurried behind, trailed by officers trying to look dignified as they ran. In the confusion, the spectators parted into two lines as the procession raced pell-mell in their direction. Panzram's face was rigid and looked straight ahead, his eyes fixed on the rope. Only at the foot of the stairs did he seem to notice the transfixed onlookers. He paused, looked slowly around, and spat twice. Then his face was forward again. Everyone's nostrils inhaled the sweet smell of new oak and hemp, and everyone's eyes followed him up the 13 steps, which he felt with his feet. He hurried up the gallows as toward the gate, pulling Ballard and the hangman with him. Reporters who had witnessed this event were surprised by its swiftness, and their accounts were in conflict as to the time and exact detail. There was uncertainty as to whether Panzram had been able to spit on the executioner as he had promised he would. The reporters' notebooks had hung limp during the swift adjustment of the rope, the exploding sound of the opening doors, and the swift downward stroke of the body. Later, they recalled the mist which had settled on the yard and the indistinct figures of guards watching from a tower on the wall. The prison had been quiet. The first bell was not yet scheduled to ring for an hour. Reporters had left the same way they came in and were relieved to find themselves outside the walls. Records of official entry regarding the death of Carl Panzram are brief. Dr. Justin K. Fuller, one of the two doctors in attendance, stepped forward and to the stretched body underneath the gallows, placed a stethoscope gently on the chest, and palpated the neck. Later, he dictated his report to a prison clerk. Medical certificate of death, Carl Panzram. I hereby certify that I examined the body of Carl Panzram in accordance with the directions of the Surgeon General of the U.S. Public Health Service and Attorney General at U.S. Penitentiary, Leavenworth, Kansas, on September 5th, 1930, and pronounced him dead at 6:18 a.m. I found the cause of death to be dislocation, cervical vertebra, strangulation, legal execution. And so ended the life of Karl Panzram on September 5th, 1930. And while Panzram died, evil, as we see, certainly did not die with him. It still walks among us today. And as we've been going back and forth on, obviously Panzram did not get many benefits in life. But that does not excuse his actions. And we are responsible for what we do. We are responsible for our lives. And if someone's had horrible things happen to them, if they've seen horrible things, if they've done horrible things, it's still important that you don't become those horrible things, that you don't propagate those horrible things. Instead, be the hero, be the savior that absorbs those things, those horrible things, and passes on good. And you do that by treating people with respect and being just kind to other human beings. And it's one of those things that I thought about this one character, this Henry Lesser, this guard. This is the first person that Panzram ever thought did something nice to him. And who knows if that had happened earlier? Maybe it could have been a teacher at the state school. Maybe that's what tips someone towards the good. You know, are you that person? Can you be that person that sways someone from doing evil to doing good simply through some sympathetic word, some compassionate gesture? Think about that. You might be that person. I might be that person. We might be that person that sets the good example by being nice, by being kind. And here's the dichotomy. At the same time, you got to be strong enough to stand up to people that think might makes right. You got to be strong enough to face the malevolent force of evil. And you have to recognize that force is everywhere. That satanic force that is waiting to prey on the weak. And if we don't fight it, then that force is going to win. So we cannot stand down. And I think that's all I've got for tonight. Kind of a rough one.
Yes. When you think about it, this is pretty psycho, like pretty psychotic, sick,
way psycho,
and evil for sure. But I don't know if it was just the way it is. I do know it's the way he presented it was like, it wasn't like as tragic as, I don't know, the other stuff that I've heard.
Let me tell you part of it. He wrote it, and he became humanized in your head. So you were listening to him talk, and you were sympathizing with him, and you were understanding the harshness that he went through, and you were completely detached, and you didn't humanize any of the victims at all.
Right. Yes, that's what it was.
Opposite of the beginning, when I'm talking about this beautiful girl, Louisa, and what she went, you understood her. Go watch some of the videos of that girl.
Yeah.
She's just such a nice person.
Yeah.
Just like an angel.
Yeah.
And that's what you relate to. So as a person yourself, as a human being yourself, it's very easy for you to humanize someone. Right? You listen to Carl Panzram, you hear what he's been through, and he's telling it from his perspective, and all he's telling is an 11-year-old boy. You don't know anything about that boy.
Right. Just some arbitrary
thing. Doesn't even barely exist. Yeah. It's a word. Yeah. Boy, that's all it is. Yeah. But it's not. Yeah. It's not. That's a little kid. Yeah. That's a little kid.
That's exactly it. That's exactly what it was. You're going through his struggles, and sure, he's not, and he's talking about his anger. And everyone did, and you're like, dang, that's, he's a mad guy, and sure, I'm not siding with him, but it's more like you're just getting it from his perspective, Then he dies, and you're like, well, you deserved it, yeah. But if they told that the whole story of, like, I don't know, any one of those victims, you'd be like, dang, man, this is heavy, it's dark, and he sort of like. He didn't go into any kind of graphic detail. You'd just be like, and I committed sodomy. In fact, I was like, bro, how are you even doing that? I just sort of tried to commit. Like, how do you do that? You just, hey, come here, let me commit sodomy on you. I mean, I don't know.
Well, that's what he made it sound like. 200-pound dude against an 11-year-old boy.
Yeah, but even like his inmates or whatever, like everyone, he was just, and the point is he just sort of just.
Well, he's preying on the weak. He says all the time, he's just picking a guy that's 132 pounds.
Yeah, but
and he's 200 pounds.
Yeah, 6 feet, 200. Yeah, he was.
I don't know what the deal is, but like where I grew up in New England, the houses, like the ceilings are lower and the doors are smaller because people were smaller.
Yeah,
back in the day. And this is 100 years ago, or whatever, 90 years ago. Yeah. But people are a little bit smaller, So him at 6 foot, 190 is kind of like a yoked dude.
Yeah. Plus with all that, years of hard labor.
Swinging an 18-pound hammer.
Yeah, he was strong. Yeah, but he just sort of breezes over it, though. There's no graphic details. Just sort of, I just committed some bad crimes.
So that's why it's always good to think about the perspective of the other people.
Yeah. It's rough, man. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. But, and he should have chose a path is what he should have done. Yeah. Like how you said, you said that, right?
Well, more important, I think, because you're going to have some people out there that are going to choose the wrong path.
Yes.
They're not going to go in a good direction. And that's why it's important to be prepared mentally and physically to stand up and face that, man.
It's true.
You got to. Speaking of which.
Yes, take some jiu-jitsu. I'll tell you right now, you take some jiu-jitsu, you really decrease the probability of anyone attempting sodomy on you.
Yes. That is a big help.
Reduce. Yes. Anyway, what that means is we're doing jiu-jitsu regardless of our what we're trying to defend ourselves from.
Jiu-jitsu versus evil. That's what I'm saying.
Yes. It helps.
You need all your tools to fight against evil.
Yeah, big time.
There's evil in the world. Confirmed.
Yeah, fully.
Live evil in the world right now. Freaking
it's crazy.
Horrible.
Every once in a while it'll flash in my mind how valuable jiu-jitsu is. Mm-hmm. Like if someone said, "Hey, you can never go to the beach ever again," or you can never do jiu-jitsu ever again. See what I'm saying? Oh, you might have some issues.
No, I just think that's funny. How like the two biggest things you can put on the pedestal are the beach and jiu-jitsu.
I'm just saying you got to give up one.
Yeah. The beach isn't even on my list. I mean, other than to go surfing, but just going to the beach for you is a thing. For me, it's not really a thing.
Yeah. Well, put it this way: like I'd trade a lot. I'd give up a lot to keep jiu-jitsu if it was in
here's something.
Jeopardy.
if you know some jiu-jitsu, if you know more jiu-jitsu than most other people around you, that's a real beneficial thing.
Yeah, big time.
Can you, and it's funny because if you don't know anything, you're a little bit ignorant. In fact, you're a lot ignorant, and you don't even know what you don't know. And so you're you're walking across a parking lot, right? Yeah. And it's 10 o'clock at night, and someone comes to bother you, and you think in your mind, like, I'll just do this and this, and you don't know anything.
Yeah.
It's a complete hole in your game. And the game of life is what I'm talking about.
The game of life, yeah. It is.
If you know jiu-jitsu and you're walking across 10 o'clock at night and someone's going to give you a problem, you actually know what to do. Yeah. And the person that doesn't know anything, they're so far just behind. It's crazy.
I remember in college and I knew how to do a rear naked choke. Mm-hmm. And I like, just from watching UFC 1, 2. Never trained an actual jiu-jitsu class, but I remember in college I got into this like fight, right? And we ended up not fighting, but the kind that we started to fight, right? Mm-hmm. But it was nothing, whatever.
Was it a friend?
No.
Okay.
It was like, was
it a known person? Or just a total random?
Yeah, it was like at a party scenario. Okay. No, I didn't know. And whatever. It doesn't matter what happened. It got broken up, whatever, and we continued, our lives. But right now I'm thinking back to like how much I didn't know. Like, what was I even thinking? Like, what was I going to do? Yeah. Just sort of throw punches, or something like this? Like what? Like, even when you do get in a fight and you don't really know any, especially in jiu-jitsu, it's like, man, it's sort of a crapshoot, really. Mm-hmm. Compared to if you know jiu-jitsu, it's not a crapshoot. It's like, I'm going to either decide to do whatever I want kind of thing to this person.
If you don't train jiu-jitsu and you want to know what it's like, picture anything that you actually know how to do, like shoot a basketball or play basketball. Yeah. And picture someone that never played before playing against you. Yeah. That's what's going to happen. Yeah. If you don't know anything.
Or like, say, go find someone, if you ever can, find someone who doesn't know how to ride a bike or a skateboard. I guess not everyone knows how to ride a skateboard, but a bike, and say, hey, let's race to the end of the block on this bike. And that person doesn't even know how to ride a bike.
They've never been on a bike before. Yeah. They have zero chance of beating you.
They're just, I know, rats like that. Anyway.
So train some jiu-jitsu.
Go take some classes, bro. Just go learn how to ride that bike, bro. You don't gotta
right now. In America, you can train jiu-jitsu in so many different places. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is very amazing.
There's amazing places to train jiu-jitsu, so go train some jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. And when you do so, you want to do gi and no gi. So when you get a gi, what gi do we get? We all know, if you don't already, Origin gi. Mm-hmm. Go to originmain.com. They got rash guards on there as well. Joggers as well. Shirts.
Supplements,
of course. And that's a good one too, and I took your advice, remember I told you like, I didn't take joint warfare for like a few days, and you're like, what, why not? I was like, because I don't know, I forgot or whatever. And here's the thing, I admitted something to myself. Sometimes when I didn't take it, it's not that I forgot. It's just that I would be like, I'll take one tomorrow or something. Like I was literally too lazy to just go in the pantry right here now, by the way, like 3-4 feet away. Yeah. Get it, open it up.
So you put it in your routine now.
Bro, yes. And this is how I put it into my routine. I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to accept the fact that I'm too lazy to spend literally 20 seconds, literally, and drink, and take some pills. Yeah. There's like no way I can accept that.
Dude, I'm glad I'm not trapped in your brain with you. I'm kind of I guess, a little bit. Yeah. For at least 2 hours a week, I'm a little bit trapped in your brain.
Well, you're the one who's correcting it, because I'm like, no way. Because you're like, dude, just do it in your routine, and you make it sound so easy, because it doesn't feel that easy. But then I'm thinking like, wait, it is that easy, really. Yeah. I'm just not allowing it to
so
be
you put it by your toothbrush or whatever?
No, I keep it in the pantry, bro. 15 seconds.
Oh, but you just do it.
Just do it. Yeah.
You do a little extra.
15 seconds. Very little extra. Anyway.
Check.
Joint warfare, krill oil. These are the ones that I'm talking about that are in my routine every single day. Mm-hmm. Joints.
Also, keep the joints together. Discipline, which, if you don't know, we have a new flavor of discipline out. It's called Tropic Thunder.
Yep, I got mine.
And what? Let's be real and let's be honest. What it is
Pina colada.
is pina colada. But I couldn't have something out there called pina colada. Come on, man.
Wait, Tropic Thunder, isn't that a movie?
Yeah. And it's a good movie. It's Leif Babin's favorite movie of all time. No, actually, I don't. But it's right up there. Leif quotes that movie a lot.
All right.
I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna tell you right
Dang,
here.
I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen Tropic Thunder? No. It's definitely funny.
I know what movie that is, though. I think so. Robert Downey Jr., right?
Yeah, but the most important character in there is Tom Cruise's character. He's really, really funny. Les Goodman, I think, is his name. Anyways, so we couldn't call it in clear conscience. We couldn't call it pina colada. That's just wrong, right? No, not happening. It's an alcoholic beverage. We're not doing it. It's kind of a foo-foo. Is that a good word? Foo-foo. Kind of a foo-foo.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, you ever been to an Italian restaurant, or like where it's real nice? It's too nice. Like, they don't have like, hey, can I just get some chicken parmesan over here? Yeah. And when they bring you some food, it's really small.
Yeah, and it has like a long like name.
Yeah, you know? In a different language.
Yeah. But you know the kind they put extras on the name. You know, you know, fresh caught from the Appalachian, blah 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 in the title. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like that kind.
Yeah, but there's never very much food. The longer the title, the less food you're gonna get.
Yeah, probably.
That's a good rule right there. So couldn't go pina colada, too foo-foo. We went Tropic Thunder for Leif Babin. Yeah, you can get his Tropic Thunder on.
Sounds pretty powerful.
And then don't forget about milk.
Additional protein
and / dessert.
Yeah,
because it will fulfill your dessert desire.
Yeah,
when you get done with the ribeye steak.
So what's the gain? Like when when you lift weights to elicit gains, mm-hmm. right? You have to have a certain
gains with a Z.
Yeah. You got to eat certain amount of protein, right?
Yeah,
it's like 0.7 or 0.6.
Yeah,
grams.
Or just 1 gram.
Yeah, but here's actually what I learned with the 1 gram. Any protein, like any macro that you eat too much of, mm-hmm. gets turned to fat, and in proteins it gets turned to sugar first, from what I understand. So you can't eat too much protein. Here's how you eat too much protein. If you're going like 2 grams per body weight, per pound of body weight.
What about 9 grams per pound of body weight?
I think that's fine. So here's a good way to do it. So in the morning, I make an omelet, right, with egg whites. Mm-hmm. And it's good protein, clean, whatever.
Some of the best.
But when you if you're starting, which I kind of started to measure these things or keep track of, okay, how many calories am I really mm-hmm. eating, whatever. So I realized there's not that much protein in a regular size, even a double size egg white omelet mm-hmm. with no cheese and nothing mm-hmm. like that. So, boom, you make your egg white omelet, milk train, going on the side, make your milk shake. Boom, perfect.
Oh, milkshake.
Perfect amount of protein is what I'm saying. If, in fact, you're into, getting stronger and whatnot.
Yep. And on top of that, we got Warrior Kid milk, which is basically going to take over all milk drinks for children in the very short period of time, because everyone wants their kid to be healthy. Yeah. The kid wants to be healthy and strong, and the kid wants something that tastes absolutely amazing. So there you go, Warrior Kid milk.
Yeah. Remember, like back in the day, what was the fruit? Hawaiian Punch. Or was that only in Hawaii? That wasn't only in Hawaii.
That was worldwide.
It was just called Hawaiian Punch. Bro, it tasted like...
Hey, are English muffins only in England?
I don't know.
Actually, English muffins aren't in England. It's not a British thing.
Yeah, just like French fries aren't in France, right?
I don't think
They call them like...
pommes frites.
Something else. French. Anyway, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You used to drink the Hawaiian Punch when you were little. Mouth all red, tasted pretty good.
Yeah, well,
it was super strong. Sugar. Yeah, but bro, you can't be giving your kids that. Like now with the knowledge that it's like abuse. Not happening. Yeah, really,
it's child abuse.
Yeah,
and it's not just that. These regular chocolate milk. What is that? It's just corn syrup in milk.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
And chocolate.
Yeah, and chocolate and sugar. But when you get your kid Warrior Kid milk, guess what? You're making them stronger, smarter, faster, better.
And it tastes good.
And it tastes delicious. Because kids don't want to drink something that tastes like crap.
No, they don't.
Drink something tasty. So, yeah, Warrior Kid Mulk. All that stuff that we just talked about is at originmaine.com if you want to support.
That's the good stuff.
All American made. We throw that in there like it's a no big deal.
Yeah.
Go watch some of the videos of looms being remade.
Yeah, it's good. Also, if you want to represent while on the path, Jocko has a store. It's called Jocko Store. So you go to jockostore.com. This is where you can get shirts and whatnot. Discipline equals freedom.
Shirts. T-shirts, rash guards.
Plenty. Yes, other rash guards on there.
Truckers hats or flex fit hats.
Sure, whichever one you want, man. Whichever one. I like the flex fit. I'm gonna put a bunch of new stuff on there. A bunch. 2019. It's 2019. By the way, Happy New Year,
yeah.
brother.
Happy New Year.
Thanks, bro. Thanks. Isn't it funny? Like I felt like you felt kind of uncomfortable telling me Happy New Year. Kind of like it's too like sentimental. Like, hey, Happy New Year, bro.
Nah.
Happy New Year.
We got work to do. Let's go. Focus.
All right, New Year, new gi. See what I did there? You know how they say New Year, new me? New Year, new gi.
Got it.
I saw that on Twitter, I think. Anyway, I'm going to put a bunch of new stuff there for this year.
Okay. Cool. You can also get Jocko white tea that comes in either regular tea form, like I'm drinking, with tea bags, or the can form, like Echo's drinking, with the can. And the good thing about it is it's the only beverage in the history of the world that's guaranteed 100% to give you an 8,000 pound deadlift. That's 8,000 pounds. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. Click subscribe. So annoying. Okay, just skip this part. The Warrior Kid podcast. That one you should check out. If you don't check out the Warrior Kid podcast, whether you have kids or not, check it out. Lots of good lessons from Uncle Jake. So do that. And then don't forget about your Warrior Kid soap. And it's not soap for Warrior Kids. It's soap made by a Warrior Kid, Aiden, who's got his own business at IrishOaksRanch.com. What's that? Like Earth Made.
Earth Made?
Yeah.
What, the soap?
Well, he gets like goats. Like if you want to know the source of your stuff,
yes.
Like there you go.
What do you say? Locally sourced? Well, it's not local technically.
Well,
depends on where you are. Yeah. But nonetheless, made in America. That's true.
Okay, so YouTube, you can also subscribe to the YouTube channel, which is the Jocko Podcast YouTube channel.
Yes.
And since you're putting all this new stuff on the store, you're going to put some new videos up at some point in the, America history?
America. Yeah, sure. Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, I know you were just telling me about one.
Yeah.
Which you've done this before where you tell me about a video and I never see it for 4 months.
Well, because all right. Well, and this one could be one of those because it's like I'm going to be like pushing it, Remember the Warpath one?
Yeah.
I pushed it in the music and I was like, hey, should I make a bunch of things crumbling down? Is that going to be dumb?
Let's find out.
We're going to find out. But in the process of doing that, sometimes I'm like, this is kind of dumb, so I got to change it. So I'm gonna push it just out of fun. But yeah, okay, cool. I'm gonna try. How about that?
More videos, and also we got psychological warfare, which we have failed. We were going to get out that for the new year. We did not accomplish that, so that's not good. But we will work on it, and the current one is available. Psychological warfare on iTunes, Google Play, MP3 platforms of all kinds, where you can get little messages. We'll call from me, tracks about how to overcome a particular weakness that you might be dealing with in the moment.
I thought about this with psychological warfare. Sometimes, like, when the weakness creeps in, we don't, want to fight the weakness. It's
accept it.
Yeah, like, we're like, it's almost like, okay, this is me. You might not be able to relate because you get mad when you feel like weakness. Sometimes weakness will, creep in and I'll look forward to not lifting, you know what I mean? Or okay, so there's this burger place, right? I'm not gonna say which one. And to go to this burger place, there's a certain burger you can get that's off the program. You can't.
Okay.
It's not a diet burger.
Yeah.
So when you're like, oh, should I just stick to the program? But I'm really in the mood for this burger, right? And the weakness creeps in, takes hold, and then you made the decision. All right, hey, I'm going to slip on the diet right now. I'm back on the plan. I'm back on the program tomorrow. But I'm going to slip right now. When you make that decision in your head, you feel good. Like, oh, I don't want to change my mind because I'm so looking forward to the burger. See what I'm saying? So it's like one of those things where the reason sometimes people won't listen, or actually this has never happened to me, but I'm imagining if someone doesn't want to listen to psychological warfare, that's why. Okay. Because it's like, oh,
secretly they don't want to.
They accept it, and it's like, and they accept the weakness.
Yeah. This, again, reminds me that I'm glad I'm not trapped inside your head for more than 2 hours.
It's a daily struggle. Nonetheless, psychological, it's a good one. It helps. Yep. It helps. You gotta accept the help.
All you have to do is press play. Yeah. That's the point. That's what you're saying. You have to press play.
There's a little psychological part that you have to accept the fact that you're gonna get a spot. It's like in the gym, right? When you need a spot in the gym, you don't put on some light weight, if you have regular weight on, you don't need a spot in, cool. But you got to make the decision to put the heavy weight on there. And then you got to make the decision to go find someone to spot you. That part is hard for people. That's what I think. But once you get the spot, you got the spot. Bro, you're in no danger of getting buried underneath that bench. See what I'm saying?
Check.
That's what psychological warfare is.
Cool.
Anyway, get it on Amazon Music and iTunes, Apple Music, wherever they sell MP3s, that's where you get them. Psychological warfare. It's a good one. Very good one. Also, vary up your workout, man. Get some more workout stuff from onit.com. Go onit.com/Jocko. That's where you get. They got some good stuff on there. Ropes, battle ropes, maces, clubs, kettlebells, of course. The best kettlebells. I'm the best I've ever used. I haven't used that many, but I don't even want to try out any other ones because they're the best in my opinion. And a lot of good stuff on there. A lot of good tips on there as well. And information. Anyway, onit.com/Jocko. Good spot.
Also got some books. Miking the Dragons is out. It's live. And we should not ever run out of it again. I printed a lot more. So if you want Miking the Dragons for you, for your kids, for your neighbor kids, for your library, for your school, order Miking the Dragons. It is a story that will teach your kids and all children that read it how to stand up and face their fears.
It's so cool to see all the pictures that people post of like, oh, the kids I got Mikey's for Christmas and stuff like that.
Also, a lot of kids, this is my kid's favorite book. Yeah. This is now my kid's favorite book. That's pretty cool. So super stoked. If you haven't read it, check it out. Miking the Dragons. You can get it on Amazon. Also, Way the Warrior Kid and Way the Warrior Kid 2, Mark's Mission. And good news, I had a deadline of finishing Way the Warrior Kid 3 by New Year's Day. Guess when I finished it? This morning. Yeah, New Year's Day. I had to go and finish it before I worked out because I was at my deadline. Guess what? Prioritize.
So it was your deadline.
My deadline.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my deadline to finish the book.
You're good, man.
So yeah. So that'll be coming out, but right now get Way the Warrior Kid and Way the Warrior Kid 2, Mark's Mission. Those are both out. Discipline Equals Freedom Field Manual. I know a lot of folks grabbed that for Christmas. Appreciate it. Appreciate most that you're spreading the word to people that you know. A little gift. Give someone the gift of discipline. That's what I'm talking about. If you want the audio version, it's not on Audible. It's on Amazon Music, iTunes, Google Play, and other MP3 platforms. Of course, we have Extreme Ownership, which was recently made some kind of chart for the audiobook. Leif Babin and I reading the audiobook. Well, me and the Texas Batman reading the audiobook. Yeah. And we also read the audiobook for the follow-up to that book, which is called The Dichotomy of Leadership, which I kicked off today with a tiny little excerpt. That's the follow-on book. And I think, some people think it's better. Interesting. Mm-hmm. It makes sense that it is because now we've written more books and a little more experience to learn more. So find out for yourself. Dichotomy of Leadership, that one's available. We also got Echelon Front. That's our leadership consultancy. We solve problems through leadership. That's what we do. If you need help with the leadership at your organization, And if you have any kind of issue, whatever kind of issue you have, it's a leadership problem. It's not a problem of HR. It's a leadership problem. It's not a problem in the finance department. It's a leadership problem. It's not an operational problem. It's a leadership problem. The problem that you have in your organization is a leadership problem. If you need help with that, go to echelonfront.com for details. Also, we got the muster. The muster is now live. We got Chicago, we got Denver, we got Sydney. If you want to come to the muster, leadership conference, extremeownership.com. All of the musters have sold out, and all the musters will sell out. So if you want to come, get there early. I think there's maybe a ticket or two left for the live podcast that we are recording January 9th in New York City. If you want to come to that, try and jump on and buy a ticket real quick because it's real close to sold out. Look forward to seeing you there. Also, EF Online. So we just launched this. What this is an online interactive leadership training source. It's myself and the rest of the Echelon Front training team put this together. Wanted to be able to reach more people. Some of the, this kind of spawned from organizations that we work with where they have tens of thousands or even in some cases hundreds of thousands of employees, and they want us to train everybody on the fundamental principles of combat leadership. Obviously, with our 6 or 7 instructors, we can't do that. And so we had to figure out a way to scale the educational process. And so what we did is we went virtual. And so we put this together. And once we made it, we said, once we made it, we're making it direct to consumer as well. So if you want to check that out, you can go to efonline.com. efonline.com. And speaking of EF Overwatch, this is where we are connecting proven leaders, proven combat leaders from the Spec Ops community and from combat aviation with companies in the civilian sector that need these experienced leaders to step up and lead their organization. So efoverwatch.com is where you can get involved with that. Whether you're someone that's looking for talent, you can click on Talent Seeker, or whether you're a vet that's looking for career, click on Career Seeker and fill those out. We are standing by to help you. And if you want to cruise with us, kind of hard.
Yes, sir.
We can be found and communicated with on the interwebs, on Twitter, on Instagram, and on the Facebook. Echo is at Echo Charles, and I am at Jocko Willink. And finally, thanks to all our military personnel out there. Thank you for standing up and taking the fight to the enemy, and to our folks in uniform, here at home, including police and law enforcement and firefighters and paramedics and EMTs and the correctional officers and border patrol and all the first responders. Thank you for standing up to evil here at home. And to Louisa, Jess Pearson, and Marin Yulin, who were murdered in Morocco, we will remember you. And to the despicable savages that took your lives, we will remember you too. And we'll remember those like you, and we will never surrender to the evil that you bring into the world. We will stand up, we will be strong, and we will win. And until next time, this is Echo and Jocko.